I hope by the end of this decade, there is a book or documentary on Netflix called The Rise and Fall of the Ellison Family. David, Larry, Warner Brothers Discovery, and Paramount. Because David Ellison, he already acquired, now Ellison is the guy who owns Skydance. They bought Paramount and over-leveraged himself or his dad's money to buy Paramount. And through ego and appeasing President Donald Trump, to create a state media type situation, allegedly, he overpaid for Warner Brothers Discovery. Now, Netflix had a deal in place to buy Warner Brothers Discovery. But because Warner Brothers Discovery reneged on the deal, David Ellison has to pay Netflix almost $3 billion. I think it's like $2.7, $2.8 billion. I think it's around $3 billion. And David Ellison, in turn, bought, with his dad's money, Larry Ellison, founder of Oracle, he bought Warner Brothers Discovery for $110 million. I think Warner Brothers Discovery back in 2024 is only worth like $24 billion. And then last year, I think it's worth around $34 billion. So he clearly overpaid for that, just because of ego and appeasing to our current president. I can't wait till I see the documentaries surviving David Ellison, surviving Larry Ellison, surviving Paramount Discovery, Skydance. Because the Ellison family has over-leveraged this situation. Larry Ellison is worth about $200 billion. And for this, he backed his son with like $45 billion. But then also there's loans out for this. And it has some investors. The thing about the loans is, when David Ellison bought Warner Brothers, he also absorbed a lot of Warner Brothers debt. The Warner Brothers had a lot of debt. And I think Paramount has some debt too, but not as bad as Warner Brothers. So now you're paying that debt off. You got these investors, and some of them are, I think, Saudi investors. And you got this loan out that you're paying interest on every year. So that means your revenue has to be great. So that means Paramount, Warner Brothers Discovery, Skydance is going to have to make a bunch of magnificent box office hits. But let's put that aside, because we don't know what they're going to do on that side. If you focus on TV, there's a couple of revenue streams that they already screwed up. On the Paramount side, one of the reasons why the deal was put through between Skydance and Paramount was that they was going to get rid of Stephen Colbert. Stephen Colbert would be done from CBS after May. Regardless of what they say about Gutfeld and all these, and I don't even know anybody who watches Gutfeld, but I know he has his audience. The top guy really is Stephen Colbert. And Stephen Colbert brings in a lot of revenue on late night TV. They said, we don't want Colbert anymore. In fact, we're not going to have any late night host on anyway. We're going to give that time slot 11:35 back to the affiliates. By doing that, that means you have gotten rid of all your national advertising revenue. So that revenue is gone. Barry Weiss, who David Ellison installed as the head of CBS News, has already been tinkering with CBS News and messing that up. And most importantly, she's messing around with 60 Minutes. 60 Minutes is one of the top revenue streams on CBS, because they don't pay a lot. They don't pay a lot of top salaries, and they have a lot of older people with a lot of money who watches CBS, and that means you have like Mercedes and some of these other people advertise. You have some big time advertisers on 60 Minutes. Well, if you keep tinkering 60 Minutes, because Anderson Cooper's already gone, Cheryl Fonzie, that Barry Weiss has already messed around with, she might leave. I don't know what's going to happen to Scott Pelley. If 60 Minutes becomes more conservative, or not the 60 Minutes that this older demographic watch, they're going to tune out. And if they tune out, that means the advertisers tune out. So that's more revenue decreased. And keep in mind, they still owe debt, they still owe loans, they still owe interest. So now you decrease the revenue from late night and you decrease the revenue from 60 Minutes. And now let's look at the Warner Brothers side with CNN. CNN is not a mega revenue stream, but it makes a lot of money. CNN does pretty good. But now David Allison's going to install Barry Weiss, allegedly, to do editorial over there on CNN and change that as well. And if you start tinkering with that Fox News viewer is not going to go over and watch CNN. That Newsmax viewer is not going to watch CNN. It kind of reminds me when Megyn Kelly was hired by NBC News for the Today Show, and it was for the third hour, and it was horrible because that Fox News audience did not follow her. Now Megyn got paid; she got a quite great buyout, and she's doing really well on YouTube. But those Fox News people didn't follow her over, And I don't know why they think that people who are conservative are just automatically going to start going to watch CNN and CBS 60 Minutes. It's not going to happen. So if you have less revenue from 60 Minutes, you have less revenue from Colbert, less revenue from CNN, that means you don't have enough money to pay out these loans and these interests and even these investors. So eventually, David Ellison is going to have to start pretty soon, even a few years down the road, if the numbers aren't right, he's going to have to start selling off properties from this Warner Brothers Paramount conglomerate that he's bought. And that's great. That's great for Netflix, because Netflix is just sitting back saying, yeah, we're going to watch you eat yourself. And we're just going to, each time they sell something, we're just going to pick up the crumbs. I wouldn't be surprised if Netflix actually by 2030 become the dominant force, because David Ellison overextended himself to appease Trump and to appease his own ego. So I can't wait for surviving Barry Weiss, surviving Larry Ellison, surviving David Ellison, surviving Paramount Discovery, CBS, Warner Brothers, because it's just insane. And then once the Democrats get into office, if they take over completely in 2029, this is a pure monopoly, and they're going to try to break that up. But I think even before we get to the monopoly, I do think David Ellison's going to have to start. He's going to start selling some of these companies, because his dad, like I said, Larry Ellison right now is worth around $200 billion. And those guys I know don't like losing money. So if he goes from 200 billion down to 120 billion, for you and me, it's like, wow, okay, that's horrible, but he's still a billionaire. For guys like that, it's like, son, I love you, but you cost me money. I want my money back. And then David Ellison might be forced to sell some of these properties to get some of those billions back for his dad. Oh yeah, all because they want to give Trump his state TV. All because he wants to be like Putin and Kim Jong-un. Oh, it's just amazing how far these guys are bending over for this guy, when they're going to fall into the same fate as Trump casinos and Trump steaks and Trump universities. So it can't happen to a nicer family. I'm waiting for that Netflix documentary of the fall and rise of the Ellison family, because it's not going to happen today, but give it a few years. It's going to be #1 on Netflix.